Welcome back to the Keep Going podcast with Vin Kennedy. I'm your host, Vin Kennedy. Today we have a special guest. This is Jeff. Jeff, you want to give a brief intro on yourself?
Sure. First, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Um, as you said, my name is Jeff, but more importantly, Jeff Humphrey. I am an endurance athlete, running coach, and former lifelong musician who has had problems with weight and weight gain and weight loss. And I've now lost 200 pounds in twice in one lifetime. So choosing to rearrange my life to follow a healthier lifestyle, a happier lifestyle through running and run coaching and just being around great people. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you just touched on it. That's exactly where I want to start too. Just the transformation.
sure.
Obviously, it's a physical transformation, but I know personally what it could do mentally. And if you want to just kind of touch on that, and like you said, you've lost the 200 pounds twice now. So if you kind of want to touch on just the whole process.
Sure. So a little bit of a timeline for the weight loss was some backstory is that I was morbidly obese pretty much my entire life. There's a time that sticks with me from early on when I went out for football for the first time in my life in high school. And I believe I was going into my sophomore year of high school when I went out for football. And of course, they weigh you in school there for the team. And I vividly remember seeing the scale read 298 pounds. And I was, I think, 14 or 15 years old at that point. And from there, it only got worse as I ended up quitting football. I just, it wasn't for me. It likely was more that it was just too difficult for me at that point in time. So as I went to college, I learned more about eating whatever I want. And then you learn about partying and the things that come along with that. So I found myself, eating at all times of the day, whatever I wanted, fast food and drinking alcohol, I don't know, 4 days a week at least, and then smoking cigarettes, all kinds of just poor life choices. And it wasn't until 5 or 6 years later that the reality sank in of those choices in that life. And that was when my now wife, Brianna, and I were at the Syracuse Mall, Destiny USA in Syracuse, New York, huge mall, and they have a ropes course, like an adventure course in there. And this is fast forwarding to July of 2015. And her and two younger family members were doing this ropes course, and myself at 23 or 24 years old had to stand idle by watching them do that because of course at 450 460 pounds you can't do something like that physically, or the restraints, you'd fall into your death, which is kind of funny because if I kept going in that direction, that's what would happen anyways, in my opinion. So that happened, and for a lot of people, when you talk to them about losing usually the 100+ pound range, they have those moments in their life where it's like, oh wow, that like click, that shift.
Right.
And that was that moment for me because, as you might know, when you find the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, it alters everything. And I was like, man, she's young and she's fit and is able to do these things. And if I continue down this path, in 10 years, who knows where I would be,
Right.
and out of the hospital, taking medications, doing this, that, and the other thing, or not thinking about living, more thinking about dying. The next day we had this conversation and I was like, let's go out for a walk. It was summer break. So we were at my parents' house up in the Adirondack area of New York, and very rural town, no people by. And we went for a walk. And the first mile of that walk is pretty much all uphill. And I remember that I had to stop, I don't even know how many times, to get up that hill. But I made it up that hill. We continued walking, ended up walking for maybe an hour and 15 minutes. And within that hour and 15 minutes, we covered maybe 3.5 miles. But it was just the start of that. So I didn't really know where to go. I just started kind of learning and, knew that if I cut calories and did these things that eventually it would happen. And when you weigh that much, you cut calories pretty significantly, you start to lose weight pretty quick. And so the first time I lost 200 pounds, it happened within 11 months. I went from 450 plus pounds to my lowest before I ran the Buffalo Marathon in 2016 was 215 to 220 pounds. So roughly 230 pounds in 11 months. And as you might know, and others might know, that that's not really a sustainable way to lose that amount of weight. There were certain things that I was doing that are great, drinking a gallon or 2 gallons of water every day. I gave myself no option but to do at least 60 minutes of cardio every day, which, started with the walking, like I said, and then moved from walking to walk running, for
Yeah.
however long I could sustain that. And then that running or that walking turned into running, which is like what I fell in love with, that process of that. Um, and
You think at that time though, you kind of looked at running and just working out as a whole as more of a punishment rather than enjoyment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially because being obese throughout my childhood and then coming up through gym classes in the late 90s and early 2000s, I got bullied all the time for that. So you'd be in gym class in the locker room and you're getting prodded and picked on, and, even by the gym teacher making a mockery of you because you can't run a mile and when you're testing the mile in gym without stopping to walk or this, that, and the other thing. And so definitely, definitely thought of as a punishment at that point. And it wasn't until I would say that I ran my first mile without stopping on the treadmill at Crunch Fitness in Hattiesburg, Mississippi in October of 2015. Um, I ran like a 12:30 mile, but I didn't stop. And it doesn't matter the time. I just throw in the time out there because at that point, and in my opinion, running is running. And no matter what your time, no matter how far you're going, if you're running, then you're a runner, and that's what makes you happy. Then you should do that. So it was at that point where that mentality shifted, and I had this sense of like pride, and I was like, oh man, I called Brianna on the phone in the gym and I was like an emotional wreck because I had never done that. And now I'm 24 years old and I finally did that. And then from there, the type of person that I am, it was 1 mile turns into 2 miles. And I was like, oh, maybe I could run a 5K and this, that, and the other thing. And it just, rolls from there.
Well, yeah.
So,
Well, it's funny too. Like you could just tell the significance of that moment because you were able to name it, time, place, date.
mhm.
So it really is, and it's a big feat, especially when you're in that position. I was actually. It's funny that you brought it up because I think everything tends to be like a reflection, and we could live backwards and kind of learn from where we were. I was in a really similar spot. I was up to 250 pounds. Just for like anybody wondering or yourself, I sit around like 100 and I don't even know 85 right now. But I went from 250 down to 170 probably in like 4 months. Really unhealthy. I was running 5 miles a day. I cut out. I was eating like 3 salads a day. It was really unhealthy. I don't suggest anyone does it this way. Of course, it could be done, but like you said, there's no sustainability. So I went back up to 200 pounds and like I think I was able to last that for a whole summer. But again, you have no way of life. You have no enjoyment because everything is just depletion mode and you're kind of
Right.
restricting everything. And then again, even the running, I hated it. I was running 5 miles a day and it was punishment. I
Mhm.
enjoyed some moments of just, being outside, the fresh air was nice to an extent, but the mentality around it was you're doing this so that you could lose the weight and you never want to be back up to the weight you were at. And I think you could definitely get in a dark place with that. And and then again, how do you feel nutrition kind of so the first time around, obviously, it sounds like you kind of did the same as me, where it's just you cut calories, and is that really kind of how you did it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no secret about it. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, losing weight is hard for anybody, but in terms of like scientifically speaking, if you're in a deficit, then you're going to lose weight.
Right.
So I knew that, and I was like, well, if I'm in a deficit, then I'm definitely going to lose weight.
Right.
And I mean, as like a lot of people in the lives that we lead, I'm an impatient person. Or I was an impatient person. I should say I'm working to change that every single
Yeah.
day. So with calorie restriction, yeah, like you said, it didn't teach me anything.
Right.
And it didn't teach me the hard lesson until I gained 150 of that 230 or 220 pounds back.
Right.
And now I'm learning about sustainability, or teaching myself about sustainability, or having that conversation about, it's okay if we go to a Halloween party this weekend and I have a couple drinks and I eat some pizza, because it's about what we do tomorrow that matters more than what we did today. Like, we aren't defined by the decisions that we make right now in this moment, and those won't steamroll unless that we let them continue into that habit. Which, I mean, habits are a tough thing. So when you've lived your life a certain way for 20 plus years or longer, you've established all of these bad habits like I had. So when I went back to graduate school and started pursuing my doctorate of music, I got really busy with that. I set a goal for myself. I wanted to be a certain place. I wanted to be a certain person. I wanted to be traveling. I wanted to be teaching. And I was doing all of that. But because of that, and because of the obsessive type of person that I am, that takes hold. So it took hold of my life. And then, those 16 to 18-hour days, you only have so much time to sleep, let alone make decisions about what you're eating, let alone have the energy to go to the gym.
Right.
2 to 3 days a week even. That took hold. And then all of a sudden, all of those bad habits came back. Just like that. Boom. You make this 1 year of great decisions. And just like that, over the course of those next 3 years, I was back up to 375 pounds.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah.
Well, like you said, though, so obviously losing the weight, then that comes. And again, I feel like life as a whole is just, you have all these balloons and they're all different buckets of your life as far as where you're putting your time, where you're putting value. And it's hard to keep them all up. And at times some balloons are going to dip lower, some might hit the floor and bounce back up. And you got to kind of do your best to balance all of it. But it also sounds like, so you were kind of in a place though where it wasn't sustainable as is. So maybe, and again, everything's a lesson. So maybe it was that lesson of, hey, we need to do this a different way to create better habits and create more sustainability. Though, of course, you were also pursuing something else, which, I mean, getting your doctorate's an awesome accomplishment. Congratulations.
No, thanks. And it's stressful nonetheless, but there's so many stressors
Right.
in life, in everybody's life, whether they're whatever you're dealing with and whatever anybody's dealing with. So, but you're right. Like, and it didn't come to me until after the fact. I went for, through this process, and I got to a point where I was like happy with the music side of things, and I was doing a bunch of stuff, and I was a finalist for, what I thought was my dream job, and like in a high tier university, and and those types of things. And then that just, they went a different direction, and that's all I was focused on. I mean, I was practicing 30 minutes of music 6 or 7 hours a day on top of all of these other things for months at a time. And then all of a sudden, with one ring of a phone, it's all gone.
Right.
And that also happened in March of 2020, in April of 2020, which, so for a lot of people, that's how they felt, right? The world just stopped. And my world just stopped. Our world, I should say, because it's not just mine anymore. And then the decision became, okay, what do we do next? And we just knew we didn't want to be in Mississippi where we were. We were too far away from family, and especially with the challenges that were brought there. So we decided within 5 days that we were going to leave and move to Pennsylvania, where we are now, and that's where we've been. But then came like a long season of depression, which I am lucky, and I was lucky. I've never had to deal with something like that, and I commend anybody who's dealing with that. And so I was learning new things about myself in that regard too. So along with that came, I've feelings of worthlessness and this, that, and the other thing. And I spent, from that time in April, May of 2020 until December of 2021, really feeling that way about myself. And then that kind of epiphany happened again, that I wasn't actually happy with who I was or who I am unless I'm like getting after it, going out for a run, a long run, or working out harder, and translating that now into helping people, as why I'm having this conversation with you today, because there's so many people who struggle, and it doesn't have to be with weight loss. It doesn't have to be with anything in regards to that. It's just struggling in general. And so, similar to teaching, it's like you have these conversations with people and you help them grow and you want to help them be the best versions of themselves. And that's like my whole goal now, is to just have conversations with people and realize like it's okay to fail, quote unquote. And, we kind of define that. But again, we aren't defined by our failures. There's still time to, make up for that
Absolutely.
in our life, no matter where we are, or how old we are, or how young we are, or this, that, and the other thing. Like, we aren't defined by our past. We're defined by the decisions we're going to make tomorrow.
Absolutely. And
So,
honestly, like you said though, and when it rains, it pours. And I think that's when you could kind of, you have that choice where it's like, you let it just kind of just keep getting worse, or you make the real change. And it takes a lot to actually do that and to pull yourself out of a hole. And it's commendable. And I'm also in a similar boat where like I need to chase something. I need a goal. I need something on the calendar. But I find myself in this weird balance with, I don't know, do you know who Jay Shetty is?
I don't.
So he's more of like, he lived with monks. So he's more of like a just calm mind, like very in touch with emotions, vulnerable. And then I kind of use this paradigm for myself. And then the other side is like a David Goggins, which I'm sure you know who David
Of
Goggins
course. Yeah.
is. So yeah. So he's a new book coming out. But
Uh-huh.
I personally like, I was like on this David Goggins wave for a while. And I feel like for me personally, it's just not the most sustainable way to live either, because I hurt myself. I drive myself on the ground. It's just not good for overall.
Right.
So I try and stay somewhere in the middle where it's like the groundingness of being calm and vulnerable and open, exactly helping people. And then I need personally to drive towards something.
Mhm.
And I think it's easy to get caught up in it for me. Again, like I would be like, well, why isn't everybody running marathons? And it's like, that's such a crazy statement to make when I believe, what is it, less than 1% of the world runs marathons in their
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah. And
So,
I struggled with that at a young age too, because
yeah.
I've always been a goal oriented person. And so when I saw other people in school, if I was practicing or something, and I'd get pissed off. Like, why aren't you in
Yeah.
there, grinding? And then, you know what I mean? But then you get upset because you didn't get this opportunity or that opportunity. And now, like, the realization is that not everybody has the same goals.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's okay. That's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Not everybody's meant to be David Goggins or anybody, Nick Bear, right? Another one who can just get after it. And you watch these videos and it's easy from an outsider's perspective to take a look at those people, or like Vin Kennedy. You just look at the Instagram and you're like, man, he's ripped. Like, he looks great. He's running all the time. And it's like, and you just feel like this kind of like angst toward that person,
Right.
because, oh, they got it made, like life's easy from the outside, from the social media look in. Social media is a great tool to see these people and see your friends and communicate and connect, but it's also a dangerous place, in that regard, where if you're comparing yourself to other people and your outcomes and your goals are focused on that, then you're not living to your potential either, because you're limiting your mindset and your potential, because I'm not there yet. I'm
Right.
not ready to run, you know, uh, a BQ or whatever it is. And I know that, maybe one day I will be, maybe one day I won't be.
Right.
And that's okay to realize that. So I think that we have to be careful how we view others' success, and because it's only a snapshot in time. Running a marathon, you posting your success about running a marathon is a snapshot in time. You are not posting. I mean, some people are, and it's great, and that's what I strive to do, is post and to have the conversation about the real hard stuff. You
Right.
know, that 18-mile run where you had to stop 6 times because you are having GI issues, or you're having this, that, and the other thing, or it's pouring rain and you're doing what you need to do, or it's not all glory,
Right.
you know.
Absolutely.
And it's never just a straight path to success, whatever your definition of success is. So it's important to remember who you are, what your goals are, whatever they may be, and you focus on that. And
Yeah.
then also just being happy for people, whatever their goals are. I mean, I have plenty of friends and connections who are like crushing, like whatever crushing is, but it's like, man, that's awesome. That's so
Absolutely.
great. So,
I think, yeah, you hit on a lot of important things there. And I think one is it's so easy to demonize the person in the screen, right? Like you see a
mhm,
Nick Bear, you see anybody, a Goggins, and it's just like, well, it's easy for them. And the truth is, like you said, it's some days it's not easy for anybody. And everybody, to an extent, it's discipline to get things done. And another key thing that I've really been doing myself, I feel like when you do the self work and you could define success and even just like your own goals and your own achievements and your own, yeah, your own level of happiness, really, that's when you kind of you're looking to the other people to help support them. And it's not you turn off the competition mode where it is like just in the mirror, really, the competition. Or you're not competing to be better or to beat somebody else. It's really to beat yourself and the older version of you. And I think it really comes from defining success for yourself. And it takes work and it takes self work to kind of get to that place mentally and be okay with where you are, knowing that you're striving for more, but that you're not, you have to rip other people's buildings down to make yours taller.
right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's
Definitely.
yeah. And honestly, you touched on something earlier that it's so funny. I've never like thought about it, but I went my freshman year to play college baseball at Ramapo College up in North Jersey, and that's when I put on the weight. So I was 250 pounds. They were asking us to run miles, and I quit baseball solely for the reason that like it was becoming too tough for me. And it's so funny that you saying that it like really clicked. Like obviously I knew it to an extent, but it's tough to do that, the real analyzation and kind of just be a tough critic on yourself. But it really
Mhm.
that's what it came down to. It's yeah, I really like I kind of chalked it up because I was like, this is gonna be too hard. And it's funny, and I'm sure you're in the same boat now with how you wish you could go back to those football days sometimes because it's like now it's you could do that stuff, you know what I mean, like you've built the person that
Mhm.
could do whatever it is that you want to.
Yeah. Um, yeah, in a way, yes, but also I like to think of, just eyes forward and
Absolutely.
not thinking back on those things. I keep those for when things get tough,
Right.
if running, ultra marathon or whatever it is that my goal is, or what I'm training for, and out running for hours on end. And it's a choice, first off, that I'm making. Nobody's making me do that. I'm choosing to do that. I get to do that. And then also, nothing compares to, I think back on being that heavy and having to deal with that. And nothing, it makes it easier too, in a way. So I do think back on that stuff, but eyes ahead
Yeah.
too.
No,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so for me, like I really do. I tend to live backwards in a sense to learn. You know what I mean? Like you reflect to learn the lessons to take them with you to live forward.
right.
And then yeah, I mean you kind of touched on it already, but if you want to just go straight into running, I mean, went from having trouble walking up that hill to ultra marathons is it's a game changer.
It is. And Y yeah, and it's funny because, like, a year later and now I run that hill,
Right.
and, like, so you think about that, you get to the top of that and you think about that and you're like, "Okay, let's keep moving,"
Yeah,
and so the reflection is important, but then just continuing to move forward.
absolutely. So you first ran, what was your first marathon?
Buffalo Marathon in Buffalo, New York, in 2016. Yeah.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
you kind of dove into ultra straight from there, or did you hit a couple?
No, I like running filtered off because that's when the whole going back to school thing, and I was running a little bit here and there, and then when the weight came back, it was, rough. My wife and I ran Buffalo half marathon the following year. I was heavier. It was okay. And then from there I didn't do anything until this year, like in terms of racing.
Okay.
And then in March of this year, so in December 2021 is when I made that decision, like I said, to start running again, set goals, like just goal plan the whole year and go after those goals. And so the goal in December was to give myself 12 or 13 weeks to train for the Two Rivers Marathon, which is in Lackawaxen, Pennsylvania, which is right down the road from our house. They offer a double. So you could run the double half marathon or you could run the double marathon. And I said, well, I've already run one marathon, so I might as well register for the double.
Right.
So I did. And so I trained for 12 weeks. And then I ran back-to-back marathons, one on Saturday and one on Sunday in March
Awesome.
2022. And then there's been a couple other races, the Finger Lakes 50s in July. And then I attempted 100 miles in September and felt pretty good. And then like mile 9, my hip started hurting. And then it got a little bit worse. I changed shoes and I went to about 36 or 37 miles and just couldn't work it out. And so I just made the decision to call it a day because I didn't want to injure myself. 60 to
Absolutely.
70 more miles past that is a long time. And I didn't want to hinder my ability to run for 6 or 8 weeks,
Absolutely.
knowing that the goal is larger than that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The long game. I mean, even the
Mhm.
fact that you started having discomfort at mile 9, you made it 36 says something about you. But
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's
Mhm.
I'm in the same boat, and I was always that's where I have to find myself with the David Goggins thing where it's like that middle ground because
Mhm.
you'll drive yourself into the ground. Like
Mhm.
not everybody is supposed to do what he does for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's again just looking at where you are, what your goals are, and and then building on that. Like we're not going to roll out of bed and be able to do the 4x4x48 or
Right.
that 48 challenge that he does, or any of those types of things. But it's never to say that it's not possible for anybody to do. But that's years and years of uh fitness
Yeah.
and challenges and those types of things. So that's important to remember, having that realization that
Absolutely.
even if you are, you're fit, there's another level and there's continually other levels of fitness, watching elite marathoners or ultra marathoners or triathletes. I love watching triathlon or listening to podcasts with, like the Norwegians who are a big thing right now, Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Eden. And everybody is saying, that they're like new on the scene, but they're like, they've been training like pros
Forever.
since they were 14 for
Right.
10 years. Like that's, you have to have that, like that long view
Yeah.
of, uh, I, I'm a big what if person for myself. So I live a lot by the what if. Well, if I string together a year of, I run 2,000 miles this year projected, and then what if I can, continue that for another year and another year? Then where will I be in 5 years? I don't know because I never was that person. I was never able to do any of that stuff. So it's all new to me.
Yeah.
So,
This
there's no reason to set lofty goals and to go after them because there's no failure in that.
absolutely.
There's absolutely no failure. And oh, I went and attempted to run 100 miles. I'm a failure. No, no,
Absolutely. It's
so.
true. And honestly, the consistency really does compound. And it's funny too, because you'll see people with social media success or running success, anything, and you talk to them and it's like, and they might just pop up on your Instagram one day or your TikTok that day. And it's like, oh, this guy must be new at this. And it's you look
Mhm.
back and these people have been doing it forever. It's
Mhm.
not, there's no secret sauce. It's just consistency. It really is,
Mhm.
day in and day out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How do you think your personal journey has impacted the people around you?
I mean, it's made them into healthier, goal-driven people. My wife, for example, she wasn't a runner. I think she ran cross country when she was young, and then she wasn't a runner. And when I was running, after I'd lost weight, we went out for a run, and like she
Yeah.
just wasn't into it. And now she's run 50 miles and she placed third female in a 50-mile ultra last September. And she
Awesome.
ran a 50K 6 weeks ago and placed like seventh female. And she's running Philadelphia Marathon in three three-ish weeks this in November. And we're looking to go sub 4. And so, it's so like that's one example. And then like friends of ours, the same thing. So I think like direct impact of that is just being, for people close to you, they see it happen more than I do. I
Right.
mean, I struggle with that, the self-image and that is very real when you lose a significant amount of weight and you still see yourself as that fat person. Like I still view myself that way day to day. Or like when it like the running is tough, like when I'm tired or whatever it is, I'm like, oh man, you're still that fat person. And so they see that more than you do.
Right.
So they're even more motivated or like motivating me more to keep, pushing on, to keep going. I guess. Yeah. The impact of those people around me is it's just a circle of continuous, like if I'm struggling with something or with motivation and then I hear my wife going out the door to get her run done, I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
like I got to
Absolutely.
do this too. And and the same thing with coaching clients. I have a friend and a client who's about to run the same marathon, Philadelphia Marathon, who just started running 7 months ago.
Right. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
like,
Awesome.
we're talking somebody in their 40s, and like but that's super motivating. Like
Yeah.
it's I'm like, man, well, I can't, I have no excuses.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I'm full of them. And then I see that person and I'm like, oh, okay, just do it. And then afterwards, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah, you
You
always
know,
feel good after.
you do,
Absolutely.
you do. And it's not a lie. Even if you're feeling like crap while you're doing it, the after effect of it is just, you're like, yeah, awesome. Like
Absolutely.
I'm good. Even, I'm good. And I need that, especially as I'm learning new things and, trying to build a business and trying to build a brand and all of these things, at 31, almost 32 years old. It, I'm like, oh, I need that. I need those days. Like, yesterday I had a rather busy and stressful day, just like anybody else. And it was going to get dark. And I was like, yeah, but I need to be outside. So I went
Absolutely.
outside and I made sure to wear my headlamp and like just turned it on when it got dark. And when I got back, I was like,
Yeah.
like just
Feel
breathe it
good.
all
Yeah.
out. Just breathe it all out.
It's therapeutic. It really is.
Yeah.
I think running is a form of therapy that a lot
Mhm.
of us utilize it as such, and it's a game changer. It really is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned something about like you have issues with self-image and like you
Hmm.
still see your person as like yourself as like that heavy person.
Hmm.
So I feel like a lot of people would listen to that. And I used to say it myself too, like I was fat. There's no way around it. Like I was 250
Hmm.
pounds. I was out of shape. I was overweight. I think certain people obviously need a little more coddling, but I need to be honest with myself, especially like I don't really fall off too much anymore, but I will, in certain areas you need to check yourself. And I
Yep.
personally, that's where I channel a little bit like that David Goggins, where
Yeah.
you gotta be real with yourself. And how do you feel to someone that might say like, oh, that's you're being too harsh on yourself?
Oh, I get that all the time
Yeah,
from my, close family friends. Why are you so hard on yourself? Well, first off, it's the only way I know how to be.
right.
And secondly, because I want to be better.
Right.
I want to find the best version of myself along the way, whatever that is, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever it is. Um, so just like you said, yeah, like I'm okay with that. I've accepted that. And old Jeff, as I'll refer to him as, would make the excuses. Like when I started gaining that weight back, and having to buy new clothes for the wrong reasons again, I would just, it's okay. It's fine. I lost the weight before, so I know I could do it again. And then, that week turns into that month, turns into 6 months, turns into a year. And then, I mean, time goes by.
Right.
We lose time all the time, all the time. And then all of a sudden you're back to that person, or you're somewhere where you never thought you would be. And so it's okay to stand in the mirror, in my opinion, and talk to yourself truthfully, just as if you would talk to your loved one that you're concerned about with, if they're over drinking or over consuming or this, that, and the other thing. And you just have to tell yourself, like, if I don't get this together, then I can't possibly plan for the future, because it's a future I won't have.
Right.
Right. So I understand that people want to feel good, and you have to, but in my opinion, it's okay to have those days where you're beating yourself up because you're trying to be the best version of yourself. And on the other side of that is where you realize, and you find that happiness that you were that hard on yourself,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
It's funny though, because you touched on something. You said old Jeff, and
yeah.
me and some of my friends have a joke. Like they'll be like, "Oh, I miss Fat Vin," and they'll say that because of like Fat Vin brings back like I was eating like a pie of pizza, just hanging out. We're all
Yep.
having pizza, and like I'm eating a pie, and everybody else is sharing a pie, and it was like, and it just stuff like that, or it brings back like going out and drinking more, and
Yep.
it's funny that people put you in like that box. So it's like, oh, you were more fun when you were doing this, but it's again, it comes to defining fun for yourself and defining what your goals are and staying on that path, and no one's got to get it.
Yeah. No, no. And the people who do are the people you want to keep with you,
Right.
and that's
Absolutely.
something I've talked about, quite a bit recently. Um, is it's okay, those people who miss that old person, and that if they no longer align with what you're trying to build or who you're trying to be or whatever it is, it's okay to let those relationships fall by the wayside and lie where they will. And it takes some time to get there, but there are those situations and people that are holding you back from being that person. So that took a long time for me to realize. And that happened with that situation about that job that we talked about earlier. Was I had this great, supportive group of people and colleagues and this, that, and the other thing. Oh, well, I'm on your side and blah, 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 like this, that, and the other thing. And then that opportunity ceased to exist. So I could no longer provide certain benefits to them. And then all of a sudden those people cease to exist in my life. Like nobody's reaching out, nobody's, you don't hear from anybody. I mean, there's people I haven't heard from in 2 to 3 years
Right.
from that situation. People that I was like, oh yeah, these people care about me, because me as a person, I care wholeheartedly about, especially if I'm close with you, like I care about you, and
Right.
I want the best for you. And so like that was a learning situation for me. So now what I'm trying to do is just surround myself with people that are supportive, and they're like, you're doing great, like, and they're building me up, like when things get hard and I'm like, oh man, I suck, I'm fat, I'm this, I don't know, I'm talking all this crap to myself. And they're like, no, you have to look at, like, look at this picture of you, and then look at you now, and like look at the, you can look back on the Strava stuff, and You look at how far you ran or how fast you ran and
Yeah,
that kind of stuff, and compare those and look at the gain that you made, you know?
absolutely. Yeah,
You
I
look
think,
at
yeah,
that way, instead,
yeah.
so.
It's easy to focus on what's next, and it's sometimes you're right. Like when you're having a tough day where you don't want to do that run, it's like think of how far you've came.
Mhm,
That'll kind of push you through. What would
mhm.
you say something that scares you?
Um, there's a lot of things. Uh, Uncertainty in general, life is scary, especially, diving into something brand new, and just not knowing,
Right.
and so continuing to believe in myself and remind myself that that I am this person and I'm able to, I am a run coach, I am a runner, I am this, that, and the other thing, and just affirming that. So scare more than anything, just like life in general is a
Right.
scary thing. It's
It
a
really is.
scary thing. But you know, I think that just going into that and continuing to take each day head on and going after what we want more than anything else, that aside from the security, there's a lot of secure things, and we're lucky to live in a country and world that we do have those opportunities. But I'd rather just be pushed and motivated through that by that fear,
Yeah.
and
No,
it
absolutely.
continues to motivate me to build and reach out to people and have conversations, because I don't believe that what I've done or what I'm doing is that big of a deal. So again, that's an important thing, with the people that I choose to surround myself with now, and the people that I choose to have conversations with, or this, that, and the other thing, because I'm like, like, I don't know, like it's just what I did. Like it felt like what I needed to do, and and then but then I have people next to me who are like, you tell them this, they're like, People don't run marathons, let alone lose 200 and something pounds and do that, let alone try and run 100 miles." And like, I will run 100 miles. That's my goal for this year, and so yeah, it just keeps me,
Yeah.
pressed on.
Absolutely. And I think so as much as you could change yourself physically, it's really the mental self-belief that you've built that kind of gets you through all that, and it gets you through life, really. I mean, it's
Mhm,
you need that. And it's funny that you mentioned that as well, as it comes to like, the achievements that you have hit and the milestones that you have hit, because some people sit on the other end of that where they sit and dwell on it like, oh, look at me. And you seem to be on the other spectrum where it's like, well, not that anybody could do it, like I did it, but that's done. And on to the
mhm.
next thing, which is
Yeah,
definitely a good thing. But don't belittle your impact, because the things you are doing, like you said, you come on here, you have a conversation, you have no idea who you're impacting. And
yeah, yeah,
again, it's not you don't sound like it at all. So sometimes be proud of it. You know what I mean? It's not coming from a place of ego, and you could definitely
yeah.
tell you're a genuine dude. So just
I
own it.
appreciate that.
Of course, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, again, it's that self-sabotage thought, that imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
those types of things. And um yeah, so I'm trying to be better about that. And I
Not yet.
and
It creeps
and
in, man.
just having to, even like, I think about that, and if I can impact one person, let alone 10 people, let alone 100 people, then that's awesome,
Absolutely.
but I definitely don't I'm like, I don't think of it as any big deal
Right.
to my to my for myself, just because um it's what I felt that I had to do and I
Right.
have to do. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
But it's funny because like, I've been posting a reel a day for I don't even it's been months now. And it was one of those things too to push myself outside my comfort zone. I hated doing it at first. Now it's just became this is what I do. And it's the reels that don't get a lot of views and where I'm being very vulnerable, whereas I
Mhm,
feel it actually makes the impact, because that's I'll get messages from people I
mhm,
know or don't know. And it's
right,
those are the ones that hit. And it's funny because it's not the ones that blow up or any of that. And again, it goes back to the testament of you don't know who you're impacting. And
yeah,
your message that day might just click for someone that needed it.
right, yeah. I have to be better about that too. I'm working on the
Yeah.
social media and stuff,
Oh
and
man.
it's hard for me to share. It's hard,
Yeah.
it's just not natural to me to share that stuff and the vulnerability, like you said. So I'm definitely, I'm gonna start putting that into my schedule and my calendar, and like, thinking about like topics and things like that to release as a reel or a post, and just trying to connect with people, because that is again, we were talking about social media and the powers of that. That's a superpower of social media, is
Yeah.
just to, to make somebody, feel strong, or,
Yeah.
like, yeah, like
Absolutely.
there's
Yeah.
other people were, everybody's dealing with certain things and different challenges, like we were saying before. And so I think it's important to realize that, and when you see those others struggling with that and overcoming that, then you know that could change somebody's life. You know.
Absolutely. It's all about adding value. And I think that's part of our purpose
Mhm.
is like to pick the guy up next to you. And then, I'm in the same boat where I follow a lot of these dudes on social media where, I'll see you post a run or somebody else post a run and it's a day where I'm feeling down and it's like all these guys did it. I have no excuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
trickle effect.
Yeah.
But and then what would you say is like your big goal? It sounds like the 100 miler is.
Yeah, at this moment in time,
Yeah.
it is. I have a larger plan for something bigger scale that I'm just throwing the idea around right now. That I said the same thing to a different person. I'm not ready to like throw that out into the universe yet, or into the social media space, but
Absolutely.
it's a thought on my mind. But definitely 100 miles. I don't know why. It's just something I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
But my goal is to run 100 miles. And no matter what, and just be able to move that long, and what can it do for my life and for my day, a day-to-day life. If I can run for 20 24 hours or whatever, however long it takes, what does my 8 or 10 hour work day look like after that? So that perspective of that, and then how much am I going to grow as a person after that too, and just finding a new level of my potential, and then going from there.
Absolutely, man. And
Yeah.
you will do it. And it's one of the things on my list as well. I got a long list
Mhm.
too. And it's funny because your outlook on it exactly like mine is. And I think it's the right way to go about it because I feel like people get lost with like, oh, I accomplished 100 miles. They look to tell everybody or throw it on Instagram. And it's like, if you don't have that deep why, you're never getting through miles. Everybody thinks of the first couple and then, the last mile.
Yeah.
Nobody ever, we forget that you got to run the whole 100. And
Yeah, and you're in the middle of the night and it's cold and it
right.
might be raining or whatever it is, and and yeah, it's a real thing, but it's what can we learn from that, and how does it make our lives
Absolutely.
that much easier after that? I think there's a lot there, you know.
Absolutely. And
So
that's obviously what running's done for you already. It's changed the
yeah,
mental aspect, showed you what you're capable of, showed you who you could impact and help. And it's a deep driving why. And I think
absolutely.
yeah, it's awesome. And
Yeah.
lastly, man, it's our question is what keeps you going?
Oh, there's a lot of things. Thankfully,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's a lot of things. My number one is my wife, Brianna. Yeah, I mean, I want to be the best version for her and our future children when we decide to have children, and I want to build something that they can be proud of. And the same thing with my family, my dad, my mom, my brother. I'm the hardest working people I know. I mean, I'm surrounded by hardworking people, but my brother's a drill instructor in the Marine Corps. Talk about hard,
Right. Yeah.
and he works his butt off to do great things for and impact lives. He changes
Absolutely.
lives every single day. And then we learn that work ethic from my dad, and my mom. My dad, he's in his 60s. He has a hard time standing up in the morning, and then he'll go out work somebody my age all day long
Right.
just to provide. So I want to build something that that my family and my wife and our future children can be proud of. So that's definitely my number one motivator, and I want to be around for that.
Right.
That's the most important thing. So making these decisions now, knowing that when I turn 40 or 45, that I'm going to be here when my kids graduate high school and meet my grandchildren and this, that, and the other thing. Because if I didn't change that, that wouldn't even be a thought. It couldn't be a thought.
Right.
So.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's awesome. And I feel like whenever your why is other people, you'll never stop. You'll never stop doing it. You'll never stop improving.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, man. Just want to say, honestly, really appreciate the conversation and your time.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see you crush the 100 miles.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Thank you.
Yeah.